Hi, my name is Nicholas Lohman. I'm a partner solution architect at Amazon Web Services, and today I have my friend Rick here from Red Hat.
Thank you, Nick. I'm Ricardo Garcia, and I'm a technical marketing manager at Red Hat.
And today we're going to be talking about SAP systems and keeping a clean core with our SAP systems. So
we can start by drawing the SAP stack and all the components there. Right, we'll be on AWS. Okay, so we start with the operating system. Will be the foundation, of course. The database can be SAP HANA or any other DB supported by SAP like Oracle. And then we have the application tier. So typically here, all the SAP customers have been historically developing custom code because they need their programs, their applications. They need to create extensions to the data structures that come standard with SAP. So all this custom code is typically called Z programs, set programs. That's always lived inside the SAP code. What happens with that? That when we want to do an upgrade and change the version of SAP, that's a really complex and long process because they need to review one by one all these programs that they have created, all these custom extensions, and decide if they want to keep them or there's something in the new version they're moving to that covers for that use case. So that's something that we really need to change. And also SAP, one of the premises, when customers are migrating to the new suite, SAP S/4HANA, for which they have given a deadline of 2027, they need to take all this custom code out and leave the standard in the core.
So this custom code, it looks like it just fits right in here, but in reality, it's a lot of different code. It's a lot of code, a lot of dependencies, and a lot of complexity that's added to this whole system.
To the stack, yes, okay. and we don't want that.
Awesome. And we have, let's see, what else do we have? We have our BTP up here.
So that's SAP's platform as a service. It's the business technology platform.
And that's on, that's a SaaS that's on...
Yeah, actually it's a platform as a service that SAP offers. And it has lots of services as well, very interesting for SAP customers.
And this is connected with SAP Cloud Connector,
yeah.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
That's the AWS SAP Cloud Connector. That it makes it possible to connect your SAP estate, your application running on AWS, to BTP and consume the services there. For example, there's an SAP HANA in the cloud that's there. That's very useful when customers want to run analytics, for example.
Absolutely. So there's a lot of SAP specific tools here that are available to us to be able to be used with our SAP system. So we want to be able to get this SAP or get this custom code and move it over to here, right?
Yeah. We want to extract it and to decouple of have a decoupled design as opposed to a tightly coupled, which is the historic or legacy architecture of an SAP system.
Okay, so what platform are we going to run our custom code? Because I thought, like SAP Custom Code, that's typically like what, ABAP, right?
Yes.
A lot of times?
Yes.
So what are we going to run that on now?
Okay, so a very good solution to do this is to use Red Hat OpenShift.
Okay.
Right? Because you can take all that code, you can refactor it, you can translate it into other languages, or take the ABAP code, and run it there on the containerized platform.
So this is...
could be OpenShift or could be AWS, ROSA, so Red Hat OpenShift for AWS services.
Okay, so this could be our...
So Red Hat OpenShift service on AWS.
OpenShift service on AWS. So, and that's a managed OpenShift.
That is a managed OpenShift.
So it's simply a service that's available that we're running our custom code on here that we've containerized.
That is correct.
And
so worth mentioning that is not only the programs, as we said, the applications that are going to talk to SAP, but also these extensions, because we mentioned that customers create custom extensions. For example, if they need to add some fields to a form that's standard in SAP. So all these extensions can be develop here as well. That's following what SAP calls the side-by-side extensibility.
All right, so our side-by-side extensibility, it's
Yes.
that's going to be on ROSA as well.
Yes.
Okay. So we've got our containerized ABAP code and our SAP side-by-side extensions right here.
Yes.
And now we don't have our custom code in here anymore. So this has been standardized right here, and this is going to connect here with our, these are in different VPCs, right?
Yes, you have your ROSA cluster in a VPC, you have your SAP implementation on another VPC, so you will use VPC endpoints
So
to
we have
connect.
our VPC endpoints here.
Yes. Also worth mentioning, apart from all the custom code, so all the applications that the customers want to develop that at some point will talk to SAP, they will do it here in ROSA. Any type of application with the language of the choice as well.
Okay, so not necessarily just ABAP. This could also be what? Java?
Python, yeah,
So if I have,
you name it.
so if I have developers that are maybe have a preference on a different language that are maybe more fluent in one language, they can use one of these other languages. That opens up a lot of possibilities to be able to integrate with this.
Yeah.
And then we have the AWS ABAP SDK that fits in here too, right? So
that's a service, it's like in the form of a library that has an API, and you can use that to consume AWS services by the SAP backend. So if you need, for example, to go to permanent storage with S3, you can make the most of it, and so your processes in the SAP backend will be right in there.
So we have all of our AWS native services over here that are now going to be tied in and have a pathway to be able to communicate and be used with our SAP systems.
That's correct.
So like S3 or our text tract, yeah.
It's very useful as well for SAP if you want to, for example, deal with invoices.
Yeah, so the text track service, so with a text track, a customer can take and scan in a stack of invoices, and then all of those invoices are then fed into text tract here, and then we use the OCR to be able to get that into text, and then that gets fed back into the SAP system. Then we have Translate's another one that a lot of customers use.
It's very handy for SAP customers as well that have, for example, support teams or users with different native languages. So in order to make everyone aware of communication, for example, of tickets, updates on tickets.
So if we have support teams that are English speakers, for instance, but we have customers that are maybe speaking Portuguese or Japanese or something like that, we can utilize Translate to be able to translate those trouble tickets so that our support teams can be able to help customers even if it's not their native language or language they're comfortable with. Yes, so that's fantastic. So that's a lot of value there. So there's connecting all of these together is a lot. What other tools do we have in ROSA that now are available to us on our SAP system?
That's another very important piece because that's all you can do. You can develop, you can have your extensions here, but you need to communicate those programs, these applications, this custom code. These extensions need to talk to SAP, right? So in order to do this, we have Red Hat Application Services, which is it has different components. It's a big solution. And one of the components, for example, is Red Hat runtimes. So that gives the developers runtimes for many of the most used languages, right? So that way, it helps developers to be productive really, really quickly because they don't need to be thinking about libraries, how am I going to do this, how am I going to call that. They will have all that in the runtime, so it reduces the time to production, if you want, in a big amount. And also, apart the runtimes, also included in Red Hat Application Services is Red Hat Integration, another suite of tools to make possible this connection. So, namely, inside of Red Hat integration, we have Red Hat Fuse, or now it's going to be renamed to Camel. It's based on Apache Camel, and that is the tool that we will use to create the actual integrations, so to expose the endpoints of SAP to the applications in the form of APIs. So it's always having or adopting an API-first approach. Also worth mentioning here is 3Scale is part of Red Hat integration. That is used to manage your APIs and inventorize them. So not only the APIs for SAP, all the APIs that your IT landscape will use or your users will use can be kept here in directories, in different inventories, in different parts. It has a very granular control based on roles, role-based access control. And also a very good thing about 3Scale is that you can track the usage of your APIs. So for example, if we go back to the services, if you're going to be charged for every time you use a service and you want to keep track of your bills, you can define policies here.
So we can use those policies for guardrails for our API calls, so we make sure that we're not
going over
doing, I mean, that's one thing about electronics and software is it can go really fast, and so we don't want to be calling thousands of times a second or something like that. So that gives us some management tools available for that. So one of the, and this is how we keep a clean core by we're decoupling this entire thing, which is going to allow us to upgrade these systems on a more timely basis without as many anomalies like all of the custom code here, anytime you hear custom, it means it requires attention. So with our Ansible automation packages, if we have a fleet of these, we've standardized these because we have decoupled these systems. So we're moving all of the custom code off of the SAP systems.
Absolutely.
So the SAP systems can all be upgraded in a much more timely manner and in an easier manner, because they're able to be done, since they're standardized, they're able to be treated in the same way. And that fits into our automation workflow, so that it's a more hands-off approach, and it's a consistent workflow.
Perfect explanation. And just to give you some ideas, a normal process of upgrading an SAP version, the bare minimum that you will spend on doing is like 6 months. Normally it will be 1 year, maybe 2 years, because of all that custom code, depending on the amount of custom code that the customer has. If you take all this out, since it's the main part of, or the longest part is the reviewing the code and all that, you can reduce your upgrades to maybe a month or something like that.
That sounds fantastic. Moving all of our custom code over here, we have a whole lot more options here and a lot more tools. And these tools, like the Red Hat application services and runtimes, those are used in other applications.
Yeah, of course.
So it's another toolbox that's now available for our customers to be able to integrate with their SAP system. So SAP is not as isolated as it was. It's more, it fits into the environment. There's a path to get to AWS native services here. That sounds fantastic.
Yeah, that's all these connections, and that's what SAP also says and endorses, is what they call the journey to the intelligent enterprise. Having SAP highly connected with an API-first approach and completely decoupled.
Awesome. All right, so now we're going to bring up a decoupled workflow with an account team example. So a typical example with an account team.
It will be the invoices, right? Because
invoices keep account teams busy.
Right, and that's one of the very popular use cases of SAP, processing invoices and consolidating them.
So we'll take, so our account team will put the invoices into an S3 bucket.
Right. So normally they will scan it, right? Scan all the invoices, upload them to the S3 bucket. Okay.
And then once they're in the bucket, maybe we need to run them through TextTrack. Get everything and make sure it's all in text. That's correct. Now that we have this all in TextTrack, we can take this and run this into our AWS ABAP SDK.
So actually it will be the application that they are running on ROSA, right? That is not running inside of the SAP core anymore. So they will have an application written, for example, in this case in ABAP, that will take the invoices and it's going to process the invoices, right? And that application will use the ABAP SDK in order to be able to interact with the S3 bucket.
Okay. And then we have our SAP server over here.
Yeah. On its own VPC, as we just saw before.
And so this data can go into here, and it can be processed in our SAP server, and then it can come back from here.
Right.
And it goes back into here.
ROSA.
And from here, after it's been processed, it's going to kick it out. It's going to go into an S3 bucket that's processed.
Okay, so we're going to have two S3 buckets in this example, right? One with the invoices that are just uploaded by the account team, and then once they are processed, we will upload them to a different S3 bucket.
So from the account team's perspective, they take invoices that need to be processed and they put them in this bucket. Then it goes through the text extract, do this OCR, goes through the SDK, goes into the SAP server, gets processed, comes back out of the SAP server, integrates with our application, comes back over here to S3, and it's processed. Right. So all of this becomes a single black box to our account team, which is great because they don't need to know anything about it. All they know is they put an invoice in here in this bucket to get it processed, and it comes out processed over here.
That's great. And also they can use the features, benefit from the features, security features of S3 buckets as well, instead of having, for example, like maybe in the old days, having their invoices in a local file system, they will have them in S3 buckets.
True, and I mean, you could have policies on this S3 bucket to where it's archiving those and they're not able to be deleted, and it can go into long-term storage after so many days, or any of those things are available to them. At the same time, the program, our ABAP program here is running on ROSA, so it's still decoupled. Our SAP server is completely decoupled as well. So we're still able to have we're keeping the core clean. We have the, all of the benefits of being decoupled, and we can still upgrade our SAP system or our programs here that are running on ROSA, and that allows us to be able to have more flexibility in our environment and allows it more flexibility in managing that. The other thing to mention is that this workflow right here is very easily scalable. ROSA is a scalable platform, so if we need to add more programs that have a different workflow that then integrate into SAP server, that's all available to us.
Right, we can plug them in, yeah. It simplifies a lot and makes it a more secure process as opposed to, as I said, to the traditional way of uploading the invoices and doing fiddling around with local file systems. Yes.
This was a very different mindset from the dirty core, if we will talk about that, where we had the ABAP code all loaded up on our SAP server that was much more limiting.
Yes.
All right, so we're going to talk about another use case where we have customers that have a profile, and those profiles are in our SAP Business Warehouse.
Yeah, because we will be reporting. So in this use case, this application, we want to have his customers go through different series of products or even different stores in a mall center, for example, and they will have an application on their phone. And each time they go to a store or they go to a particular product, they can scan a code, and that will give information about the customer's preferences, their behavior. So we want to have all that in our BW system in order to produce reports and see customers' behaviors and see how we can be more effective or which product is being more effective, for example.
So all of that information stored over here in our SAP system. So we need to be able to get that data that we're getting from those apps into there. And we're going to go back to our ROSA platform here. And what are we going to use to get that location data
Well, so first of all, we will develop our application. So for example, it can be an application written in Java.
Okay.
That's what the customers will have on their mobile phones, right? And then we are going to have, we need to integrate it with BW, of course. So we're going to use Red Hat integration, namely for the APIs that will expose the endpoints. It will be Fuse, Camel. It's now the name.
So we have Red Hat integrations, and then we have Fuse.
Right.
And then
we're going to have as well AMQ as the event to manage the events. So each time the customer scans the code, that will produce an event that will go into an AMQ queue.
So the AMQ is taking all those messages from the app on the customer's phone, and it's taking those messages and it's putting them in here.
That's correct.
Okay.
And then what we want to have as well is a way to suggest or come up with suggestions for the customer based on their behavior. So for example, telling them about offers on some products or recommending.
So AWS has a service that's designed to do that called AWS Personalize.
Perfect.
So
that would be a great fit for this use case. I reckon it has an API, right, that we can call from whatever application. Good.
So we're going to use our API to connect that to our application here. So that's going to go
That's perfect.
over to the AWS Personalized service. It's going to be on the API. So all of this will talk to and put our customer data profile inside here. This is still being consistent with our decoupled architecture. So our SAP will still have a clean core because all of our application is over here in a container on ROSA, and our AWS Personalized service is available to us whenever we need it.
Right. And there's still one more thing here that we could use. Since we're using Red Hat integration, we can use 3-scale in order to have all our APIs. So all the APIs that will be needed in our IT landscape, they can be here. They can live in 3-scale, be there like an inventory, but not only that, you can monetize or keep track of the usage of your APIs. So every time you're calling AWS Personalize, you can keep track of that. So if you need to put a limit to your monthly bill, you can establish that in the form of policies.
So we can put some boundaries in there so that we know, so that we want to use the personalized service, but we want to make sure that we're not, we're generating those,
right, we don't overdo it.
Overdo it. So we're staying within the boundaries of what we want to do in managing our systems. That sounds great. All right. Another use case is where we have our SAP system over here. And in this application, we have an ERP system. And inside of this, we have all of our products. And one of the things that I always find interesting about our products is to be able to see, how they are priced in performing compared to other product offerings from other websites.
Right. Yeah.
So, once again, we're going to go over here to our ROSA platform, and we're going to go through this, and what we want to do is we're going to tie this into here again, and we're going to do some stuff on these products here.
So again, we need to use the same tool set that we used before, right? The integration part of it, so the Red Hat integration.
So we have Red Hat integration again. It's the same toolbox we've been using.
Yes. So namely, we will need Fuse or Camel to expose the endpoints as APIs, the endpoints from the SAP, so to call the methods that we need to access the products. And right.
And then we're going to write our program in Java so we can
For
have
example, Java
all of
or
our
any other language.
developers can access this. And what we want to do is we want to get we're going to use this program in our Java to be able to get to compare our pricing compared to our competitors. So we're going to get the high and the low price that it can find available. And our program right here is going to reach out to the web and find that.
So basically the program is extracting those data from the product, right? The price.
Absolutely. So it's looking at these products, and if it says that now I have product XYZ in my catalog, it's going to go out to some other sites and find out what the high and the low and price is from our competitors on these same products.
Makes sense.
And then once we have this data right here, we want to be able to do some analytics on that. So we want to be able to see if a product's moving really slow and it's priced really high compared to our competitors.
Right.
Maybe we should adjust the price on that to be able to move some more
Move the
products.
price, yes. Okay.
So in order to be able to do that, we want to integrate with our AWS analytics services.
Okay, so those are services available on AWS that, like in the previous use case, I'm sure they will have an API to be called, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So we can use API here. It's going to integrate here with our Java. And the AWS Analytics, there's a whole suite of services. So if you want to have a dashboard that pops up, some sort of visualization so you can look at something. You know, the other thing is that, you know, by having this data, you could see, hey, you know, I move a lot of these prices, but it's, you know, this one product is 20 or 30% lower than what it is out on the street.
Right.
So maybe I'm missing out on profit on certain products. So by utilizing AWS Analytics and the toolbox that we have here from Red Hat, we're able to generate that information, and then we can make decisions based on that information. Okay. One thing I want to highlight right in here is all of these tools that we're using here on ROSA and these different applications, they are very flexible. So there's a lot of flexibility in what we can do here with this.
It's a set of tools that you can use them, and they will be fit for many use cases that we can write.
So, and all of these are in a single middleware bundle, right?
Yes, that's true.
So basically I can buy a middleware bundle, and I have my development team learns one set of tools, and they can use it with my business warehouse SAP system, my ERP system, and they're able to integrate that with different AWS services. In this case, it's analytics, but some of the other use cases we've seen that it's able to tie into other AWS services as well. So that, again, is another example of the flexibility in this system. All the same, at the same time, we're keeping the clean core over here.
Of course, yeah. And in the end, all that is transparent to the developers, whether it's an ERP in the backend, whether it's a BW, whatever, because they will be provided with the APIs that will be created with Fuse or Camel. And they don't need to know the details of the backbone of SAP. Also, as we said in the previous use case, I would add here a 3-scale as well. Since we are using APIs, of course, we can download these APIs, the APIs of the AWS Analytics services. We can download them and have them inventorized on 3-scale and then as well tracked.
Absolutely. The 3-scale also helps us to have our guardrails so that we are utilizing the APIs as much as we want to, but we're not overutilizing them in order to be able to stay within our constraints of our budget.
Right.
Awesome.
Perfect.
That sounds great. Thank you all for joining us today. We really appreciate it, and thank you, Rick, for having.
Thank you, Nick. Pleasure being here.